My name is Bailey Koch, and I'm a board-certified pediatric dietitian. I am president of Atlanta Pediatric Nutrition and lead dietitian at GI Care for Kids, as well as a member of the medical advisory board for nutritionforkids.com. Who is a candidate? Well, a Puree by G-Tube diet is real food, so it's also meant to be thick. It's used for kids that have problem with retching and gagging, severe cases of reflux as well. We've been very successful with kids that were previously fed a formula and didn't tolerate because they were retching or had reflux. So we've been very successful transitioning from a formula to a Puree by G-Tube diet and seeing great results with that. Puree by G-Tube diets are administered through the G-Tube as a bolus. A bolus is a large volume of food that goes directly into the G-Tube at one time versus a continuous feed that would be put over a pump and would be a small amount administered over a longer period of time. So food safety is a concern, and you wouldn't want it sitting out for longer than definitely 2 hours. So it's recommended to give it as a bolus feed, and that is part of when we determine whether or not a child is a good candidate. That is definitely something that we look for. So how do you get started? Well, the first step would be to make an appointment with a registered dietitian who has experience in making blended diets for patients. The dietitian will bring you in, determine what the child's nutrition needs are, and then go through and just explain to you what is a blended diet, how are you going to come up with a recipe, how much are you going to have to feed, that type of thing. So the appointment is really just information gathering and helping the dietitian get a better idea of what is going to work best for your family. You should get a complete recipe with all of the ingredients, the nutrition composition of it, and the recipe should make enough for one full day, so you can blend it up the night before, after you've put the kids to bed, and then it's all prepared the next day. You start with a milk, so the milk choice would depend on the individual child's needs, but if it's a younger child, it could be an infant formula, it could be a pediatric formula, or if you have a child with food allergies, we could use something like soy milk or hemp milk, oat milk even, and even a hypoallergenic formula such as Elecare or Neocate would also work. Once you add the milk base, then you would decide on your carb source. So for a carb source, we're typically going to use some sort of infant cereal. If we don't need the vitamins and minerals that an infant cereal would provide, then we may go with something like steel cut oats or cream of wheat, cream of rice, something along those lines. After we add in the cereal, that also serves as a thickener, we would add in the pureed baby foods. So some families prefer to make their own, which is perfectly fine, and other families prefer to just buy the ready-made baby foods at the store, in which case we would recommend the stage 2 baby foods. We would tell you how many jars of fruits, veggies, puree meats to add into the blend. Then we would circle back around and add in whether they need fats, so we may add in some extra oil. I typically use flax oil if constipation is an issue, because that tends to help with that. And then an additional carb source, whether it be sugar or honey, agave. There are a lot of options there as well. You have to be sure and check the sodium amount in the brew. So sometimes we'll use iodized salt or just a little bit of table salt, depending on the iodine level when you get the finished composition of the home brew. I like to add in yogurt or kefir for a natural source of probiotics as well. You can divide it up however you want. I like to keep a normal physiological schedule. So 3 meals, 2 snacks a day, 3 meals, 1 snack a day, whatever works best for the child based on the scheduling and family's needs. So I'll take the full volume and then divide it into 4 feeds a day, and the parents would administer using the 60 ml syringe. So if the child is supposed to get 120 mils, which is, there's 30 mils in an ounce. So 120 mils would be a 4 ounce feed or a half a cup. The 60 ml syringes is what's used to push the blend through. So that would be 2 60 ml syringes given at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then potentially another snack, depending, like I said, depending on the child's needs. Some older kids, they may need 240 mils per feed in order to meet their needs and use up the formula that's been prescribed for the day. Most of these formulas, like I said, we can concentrate them, which is wonderful in your volume sensitive kids. So typically an infant formula is 20 calories per ounce. A pediatric formula would be 30, and occasionally you can get a 45 calorie per ounce. We can easily concentrate a blended diet to be 45 calories per ounce, and because it's thicker, it tends to be much more tolerated. The thicker it is, the harder it is for it to come up. So for our patients that have problems with reflux, gagging, retching, it's very, very well tolerated. It's also very helpful in kids who have chronic constipation, which is oftentimes an issue with our kids that are being tube fed at home. Along with the Puree by G-Tube recipe, you'll also be given a total amount of free water that should be provided in addition to the blended diet. This is important because the blended diet does not include the fluid. Remember, one of the main points, one of the reasons why it is successful in a lot of these cases is because it's thick. So we don't include the water in there. So you should be given an amount for the day in order to meet the child's free water needs. Parents can use the free water to thin the recipe out as much as they need in order to get it to pull up in the syringe and then go through the G-tube. But always remember, you want it to be thick, so you don't want to thin it out too much. Usually we use the free water, we give it in between feeds. Just as if you or I were taking a sip of water, we would give it through give the water through the feeding tube to help with hydration throughout the day. And then it's also used as flushes in order to make sure that the whole blend gets into the tube. So we'll usually flush the tube with 30 to 60 mils after each feed. To transition from their current tube feeds onto the Puree by G-Tube diet, we'll continue with their current feeding regimen, but provide about 30 mils or 1 ounce or a half of a syringe in between 2 of their current tube feeds. Then, if they tolerate that okay, then about 2 hours after the next feed, we would go up to 60 mils. And we would continue that process, basically increasing by 1 ounce at every feed to the goal volume, whether it be 120 mils, 240 mils, whatever it is. Once you get to the full volume, then you can switch over, you can discontinue your current feeds and switch over to 100% Puree by G-Tube diet. And you should expect no problems with tolerance at that point. We do recommend a follow-up about a month after implementation. We try to keep kids at their same calorie level when we transition, but oftentimes we notice that kids, even on the same calorie level, when they go to a Puree by G-Tube diet, they may gain a lot of weight or they may lose weight. So we recommend following up about a month after implementation so we can look and see what that child's weight is doing and then adjust the calories accordingly.